What if the night sky isn't just a random scattering of stars, but an ancient book written by God Himself, a cosmic story of redemption that predates the Bible by thousands of years? Tonight, we're diving into one of history's most stunning mysteries, evidence that the Zodiac and constellations weren't invented by ancient mythology at all, but were actually designed by the Creator as the original gospel message for all humanity. Stay with us as we uncover how patriarchs like Adam, Seth, and Enoch may have charted the heavens under divine inspiration, and why the Bible itself confirms that the stars were meant to tell us something far more profound than tomorrow's horoscope. Welcome to Uncovered Biblical History and Traditions, the channel dedicated to lost stories of the biblical past. Discover stories of pre-Christian historical roots, biblical legends, lost church history, and forgotten historical characters of faith. It is very helpful if you hit the like, subscribe, and share. Help build my channel, and let's take a look together into these uncovered forgotten tales. The story begins where all stories begin, at creation itself. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, God makes a declaration that most people breeze right past, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and years." Notice that word, signs. Not just lights, not just decorations, signs. A sign, by definition, is something deliberately chosen to represent something else entirely. God wasn't just hanging lanterns in the sky for illumination. He was encoding a message, crafting celestial symbols that would speak truths beyond what the naked eye could naturally deduce. The heavens, it seems, were always meant to be a divine textbook. But here's where things get fascinating. If we travel back to what many scholars believe is the oldest book in the Bible, the Book of Job, we find that this cosmic wisdom wasn't some recent revelation. Job's story unfolds in an era so ancient that it contains absolutely no reference to Israelite history, no mention of Moses or the law. The prophet Ezekiel brackets Job with Noah and Daniel, while James in the New Testament reminds believers, "Ye have heard of the patience of Job." Mathematicians who've analyzed the astronomical references scattered throughout Job's 42 chapters have calculated that this patriarch lived around 2150 BC, over 1,000 years before Homer penned his epics, and 15 centuries before Thales became Greece's first philosopher. Yet even in Job's time, the heavens were already systematically organized. The Zodiac existed. The constellations had names. The stars had been charted, their patterns drawn and recorded. This wasn't primitive stargazing. This was sophisticated astronomical knowledge passed down through generations. God Himself challenges Job with a rhetorical question that reveals just how established this celestial system was. "Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth, the constellations of the Zodiac, in his season?" Obviously, Job couldn't control the stars' movements. No human could. The constellations appeared in their appointed times, following divine orchestration. Job also described specific star formations with an intimacy that suggests widespread familiarity. He writes, "By his spirit he hath garnished, made bright or beautiful, the heavens, his hand hath formed the crooked, or fleeing, serpent," a clear reference to the constellation Draco, the dragon. He mentions Arcturus and Orion, the Pleiades, and even Leviathan, the sea monster known today as Cetus. The way Job writes suggests that educated people of his era didn't need these explained, they already knew them. And Job isn't alone in testifying to the divine origins of the stars. The psalmist declares with poetic certainty, "He telleth the number of the stars, he calleth them all by their names." Every single star, individually named by God Himself. The prophet Isaiah echoes this, crying out, "Lift up your eyes on high, and behold who hath created these stars, that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them all by names by the greatness of His might, for that He is strong in power, not one faileth." This isn't metaphor or exaggeration. These prophets believed, and declared, that God personally designed and named the celestial bodies, and that His power maintains them so perfectly that not a single star fails or goes missing. Even more intriguing, by the time we reach Abraham in Genesis chapter 15, the stars had already been numbered and named. God brings Abraham outside and tells him, "Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be." The stars served as a visual aid to illustrate God's promise that Abraham's descendants would be innumerable. But notice, the stars were already established symbols by this point. And this, scholars note, shouldn't be confused with the singular seed, Christ, in whom shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. So who created this celestial catalogue? Who had the wisdom, the time, and the divine mandate to chart the heavens in a way that would speak across millennia? Ancient Persian and Arabic traditions point to three names: Adam, Seth, and Enoch. And remarkably, this aligns with what the most respected ancient philosophers and historians discovered when they investigated humanity's origins. Consider Adam's unique position. He was the first and only human created in perfect fellowship with divine intelligence. Unlike everyone born after him, Adam possessed what could be called intuitive divine insight, a direct understanding of the true nature of everything he encountered. He didn't need teachers because his entire being resonated in perfect harmony with God. He was, quite literally, the complete image of God walking the earth. His wisdom exceeded anything that came before or after. Even his own descendants, brilliant as some would become, couldn't match the knowledge Adam possessed. But Adam received more than just innate wisdom. After the fall, God gave him specific revelations about the serpent and the seed of the woman, essentially, the entire gospel message wrapped in prophetic promise. And here's the crucial detail: this knowledge wasn't meant only for Adam or only for his immediate family. He was commissioned to make it known to all the races of creation. Adam was humanity's first evangelist, tasked with transmitting divine truth to everyone. The ancient historian Ballius wrote something remarkable about Adam: he was the first that discovered the motions of the celestial bodies and all other creatures. From his school proceeded whatever good arts and wisdom which were afterward propagated by our Father unto mankind, so that whatever astronomy, geometry and other arts contain in him, he knew the whole thereof. Moreri's tradition states simply, Adam had a perfect knowledge of sciences, and chiefly of what related to the stars, which he taught his children. Now, think about the practical reality of Adam's situation. He and his immediate descendants lived for hundreds of years, centuries to observe, study, experiment, and record. They had time to devise systems for preserving knowledge, methods for transmitting the Creator's plan across generations and cultures. And above them every night stretched a canopy of pristine, unnamed stars just waiting to be organized into meaningful patterns. No natural object could be more perfect for encoding eternal truth than the stars themselves. They couldn't be destroyed, couldn't be altered by human hands, and would remain visible to every culture, every nation, every generation. As long as humanity recognized the divine nature of the Zodiac, the message would remain imperishable. According to the historian Josephus and even more ancient sources, Adam and his son Seth are credited with inventing the alphabet, the very letters that would eventually record scripture. They're also specifically noted as inventors of that peculiar wisdom which is concerned with the heavenly bodies, their appearance and arrangement. Then there's Enoch, the mysterious patriarch who walked with God and never experienced death. The Babylonians attributed the invention of astronomy to Enoch. The Greeks knew him as Atlas, literally, the man who carried the heavens. The Egyptians and Arabian writers identified him with Hermes Trismegistus, the triple great shepherd, through whom stellar wisdom and sciences passed to later generations. These biblical patriarchs, tradition tells us, were the first to draw what we might call celestial hieroglyphics. They named the stars, grouped them into constellations, laid out the zodiac, and essentially transformed the night sky into a picture gallery accessible to the entire world. Their legacy enabled humanity across all cultures and all time periods to look up and read the story of the promised Redeemer, the redemption he would accomplish, and the redeemed he would save. The inspired prophets understood these star signs as symbols of God's divine revelation and promises. This explains why virtually every ancient civilization held the starry emblems in such sacred reverence. It accounts for the universally held doctrine throughout antiquity that the constellations were divine in origin and sacred in character. Even when nations fell into idolatry, when they began worshipping the stars themselves and ascribing to them all sorts of divine and prophetic powers, they still maintained a core belief that these mysterious symbols were manifestations of one supreme, eternal deity. Archaeological evidence supports this narrative in stunning fashion. The Chaldean Genesis tablets, recovered from the ruins of ancient Assyria and Babylon, date to over 2,000 years before Christ, and their substance is nearly identical to the Mosaic account of creation. The fifth tablet specifically describes how God created the star constellations, the signs of the Zodiac, which the heathen called mansions, the stations or resting places of the 7 planets, and the planets, moon, and sun. This parallels exactly what Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 states, "Let them be the signs." And it echoes Job's testimony, "By his Spirit he hath garnished the heavens." Without question, the names by which we know the constellations have been handed down from deepest antiquity. The source of inspiration that resulted in their naming and meaning is repeatedly implied, and sometimes directly stated, as coming from God himself. Now, traditional historical astronomy likes to claim that mythology fathered these remarkable delineations of the heavenly bodies. But the evidence tells a different story entirely. The classic fables and myths surrounding the constellations aren't the original tale, they're corruptions and imitations of something far older and far purer. Mythology didn't create the celestial gospel, it distorted it. So let's return to our opening question: what if the night sky isn't random, but rather an ancient book written by God? The evidence suggests this isn't speculation, it's biblical, historical, and archaeological reality. The stars were created as signs, designed to communicate divine truth. Patriarchs like Adam, Seth, and Enoch, living for centuries under divine instruction, charted the heavens and encoded the gospel message in constellations that would outlast any earthly monument. The Bible itself confirms this repeatedly, from Genesis to Job to the Psalms to the prophets. Even ancient civilizations that fell into corruption remembered enough to revere these celestial patterns as sacred and divine in origin. The tragedy is that over millennia, the pure message became obscured. What God intended as his universal storybook, accessible to every tribe, tongue, and nation before a single word of scripture was penned, became overlaid with mythology, superstition, and eventually, the trivialized horoscopes of modern astrology. But the original structure remains. The stars still shine in their appointed courses. And for those willing to look up with eyes informed by scripture and history, the celestial gospel still proclaims its ancient, unchanging message, that God has a plan, that a Redeemer was promised from the very beginning, and that the same God who flung stars into space also numbered every single one and called them each by name. The heavens, as the psalmist wrote, truly do declare the glory of God, and perhaps in more ways than we ever imagined. If you would like further context and the rest of the story, check out previous videos and future videos. If you would like more information where to research this subject, pause this image and look into these resources or find resources in description. If you have book sources or links of your own on this subject, please share in comments or email me. Thank you. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.